Hello, everyone. Welcome to the World Sustainable Procurement Day 2024 and this special session. And I'm saying special because we're having here the event as a hybrid event. This session is one of the 3 sessions today at the 24-hour virtual event of the Sustainable Procurement Pledge online on the Airmeet platform. And we also have a live audience for this session in The Hague, in the Netherlands, at the Euclid Network Impact Summit. It's a unique way because we're trying to have the first physical hub for this event happening. And we're very pleased as well that means we also have 2 speakers here on stage with us in person in the Netherlands. And we have 2 speakers online in this session. We have an online audience from the World Sustainable Procurement Day, the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. We also have an online audience from the Euclid Network Impact Summit. And we have a live audience here in the room of around 200 participants that have registered to the summit, and some of them are participating in this session. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our fabulous moderator of today, who will kick off the session, Paola Robert from the United Nations World Food Programme. Paola, over to you.
Thank you so much, Viteke. Thank you everybody that has joined online and everybody that is there in person. I would definitely love to be there in person, but this is also, as Viteke was saying, a very special session since we can do it hybridly. Thanks again for having us join and present during the session. So as Viteke said, my name is Paola Robert. I am an environmental specialist on procurement from the United Nations World Food Programme Global Logistics Cluster environmental team that is called the WREC project. The WREC is spelled WREC, and it stands for Waste Management and Measuring, Reverse Logistics, Environmentally Sustainable Procurement and Transport, and Circular Economy. So a very long name. But I don't expect everybody to remember exactly everything in the name, but please remember us as the project that is here, or the team that is here to drive sustainability, and that's why we're being part of this event. So today we have an excellent panel that I have the honor to be moderating, and we will be discussing, we will be talking about circular economy, its principles, some of the challenges organizations have encountered across different sectors, and the learnings that we have so far. So before we begin, just a few housekeeping rules to mention. So the session is being recorded. We want this also to be a very interactive session, so please share your questions through the online platform, and also people in the room, please raise your questions when we finish. Please also spread the word online. So the World Sustainable Procurement Day is using the hashtag Collaborate to Accelerate. So please use this to continue driving and spreading the word. And as you might be aware as well, the Sustainable Procurement Pledge is looking to raise to build a community of 1 million. So anybody that can, that is here and is trying to drive sustainability, please also join the community. So before we begin, I'll briefly introduce our panel members. So joining online, we have Michela Balzino. Michela is an environmental specialist on circular economy and reverse logistics from the WREC team. So we're both in the same project. And she is also an environmental engineer with several years of experience working with the United Nations on supply chain operations. Then in the room, we have Cindy Venho. Cindy is a program manager at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. She is a circular economy expert who collaborates with businesses, academia, and policymakers to advance their circular economy initiatives. She's also, she has extensive experience in researching circular opportunities across industries like food, fashion, and the built environment. And last but not least, we have Åsa Skogström. Sorry, Åsa, if I don't pronounce properly. She is the managing director of IKEA Social Entrepreneurship. And Åsa has a background working in business and NGOs. She was previously the global president and CEO of the Hunger Project in New York, and she is the CEO and also the CEO of the Hunger Project in Sweden. And she's also introduced social entrepreneurship into the supply chain at IKEA of Sweden. So before we start with our discussion, we wanted to just share a quick video so that to introduce the topic and then start with the discussion. Is just to check, is the video played? We can't see the video online, but I'm not sure. Okay, there it is.
A circular economy based on eliminating waste and pollution, circulating products and materials, and regenerating nature offers a framework for businesses to build resilience while also reducing greenhouse gas emissions and cutting costs. So, what might supply chains in a circular economy look like? First, they are distributed and interconnected networks of partners. Sojo leverages a localized approach to offer door-to-door repair and alteration services. Second, they rely on new flows of information, goods, and money. Synctronics feeds back information on HP's end-of-use equipment to inform upstream design decision-making and keep products in use. And third, they deliver and capture value using circular inputs and processes. RN has built forward and reverse supply chain capabilities to efficiently disassemble, repair, and upgrade furniture, so that every product has multiple lives. Want to find out more? Check out our latest insights on circular supply chains at emf.org.
Great, thank you very much, and hopefully you were able to hear the video well. So starting with our discussion, Cindy, I wanted to first ask you if you can share with us what you would define as circular economy, what the key principles are, and also how is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation supporting organizations to implement these?
Sure thing. Thank you, Paola. So the circular economy, we usually start that definition by thinking about what we have today, which is predominantly a linear economy, where we take resources from the ground, we make products out of them and materials, and then pretty soon afterwards we discard them as waste. It's a very extractive, polluting, and wasteful way of operating, and this is where the circular economy comes in as a solutions framework. So the circular economy is essentially a system whereby we can meet all these demands for materials and products without actually ever generating waste and while also regenerating nature. So as you alluded to, Paola, there are 3 principles that we consider in the circular economy. The first is around eliminating waste and pollution. And this really centers on seeing waste and pollution as design flaws and as such things that we can design out when we think about how do we design our products, but also our operations and our business models. So if you were thinking from a procurement lens, you're thinking about how can I source ingredients or components or materials that will not end up creating waste as they move further down the value chain. The second principle is around circulating products and materials. So this is really how can we keep what we already have in the economy in use for as long as possible, but also at as high a value as possible. So we talk a lot about inner loops versus outer loops in the circular economy. Inner loops being things like reuse, repair, sharing, anything that allows you to keep that product or material in use without very much having to be done to it for it to have multiple life cycles. And then outer loops are things like remanufacturing and recycling. So once you can no longer keep as much of the embedded value as is, you might need to do some more processes to keep those components in use. So again, from a procurement angle, as we saw in the video, you can think about how can I source circular inputs or secondary materials rather than virgin ones. And the third principle is around regenerating nature. So this is really about how can we make sure that all of our economic activity not only doesn't have a degrading impact on nature, but actually can have a positive impact. The easiest way to think about this is in a lot of our agriculture and any type of practices that we have to source renewable materials. Many of those today degrade a lot of the ecosystems in which those happen. But if we switch to regenerative practices, we can create more actual benefits to those ecosystems and the health of them. So those are the three principles. And together we see that they can be, when harnessed in different sectors or across different businesses, can really create a lot of benefits for climate, as again we saw in the video, but also for biodiversity. And yeah, our role, to get to your question, your second part of your question, Paola, our role at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is to develop a lot of the thinking around circular economy and promote that. Also engaging with key stakeholders, so businesses, startups, policymakers, cities, and academia, and really convening these key groups together to ultimately mobilize systems change. So we particularly have teams that are focused on food, plastics, fashion, and finance, but equally we do more cross-cutting themes like the research that we did last year on circular supply chains, which supply chains touch pretty much every industry. So that's in a nutshell the circular economy and our role in that space.
Right. Thank you very much, Cindy. And I guess, yeah, looking at it also from a different lens, I wanted to ask Michela, you coming from a different sector, which is a humanitarian, can you briefly share what the United Nations World Food Programme's Global Logistics Cluster-led WREC project is about, and the type of initiatives that you're also taking to drive circularity and environmental sustainability across supply chains?
Thanks, Paola. And before answering to your question, let me give some background information on the context where I work and what the humanitarian organization and humanitarian supply chain do. Humanitarian supply chain play a critical role in ensuring the timely and efficient delivery of essential supplies to people affected by crisis or disaster during emergency operation. And often unintended environmental impact, talking about production of waste, production of greenhouse gas emission, can hamper the effectiveness of these efforts and can affect also the health and the livelihood of the crisis-affected communities that we serve. And this happens for years and years after an emergency occurs. And all humanitarian organizations, talking about United Nations humanitarian organization, but also NGOs are facing the same issue at the moment. And there is more and more understanding that no single organization can tackle this issue alone. And this requires a coordinated effort, a coordinated approach to reduce the negative impact of the humanitarian supply chain. And that's why the humanitarian community came together and launched the WREC project in 2021. The project aims at providing guidance to the humanitarian community on environmental sustainability and circular economy applied to humanitarian supply chain. This to reduce all adverse environmental impacts of humanitarian operation. The project, as you mentioned before, is coordinated by the Global Logistics Cluster and relies on a network of more than 500 partners around the globe to share information, challenges, best practices, tool, guidance, and so on for the entire logistic community. In a nutshell, what we do is we gather and share information, best practices, tool, and guidance with all the community, but we provide also guidance and technical expertise via a team of specialists that we have at the WREC project. We train humanitarian supply chain officers in the field and at HQ, and we raise awareness. And last point, we coordinate. As we said before, to being able of accomplish this journey through circularity and environmental sustainability, we need a coordinated approach. We need to communicate between each other. And this doesn't require only communication between the humanitarian organization, but also we need to include the academia sector and also the private sector. And we do all this that I just mentioned up to now by embracing a holistic circular economy approach, designed with a long-term environmental sustainability in mind. And to maximize the potential of this approach, we promote the adoption of circularity throughout the entire supply chain life cycle, starting with the tendering and purchasing of products that are more recyclable, that are more repairable, reusable in the countries where we operate, because we always need to keep in mind that we operate in very specific country, in very specific region of the world. Then we also apply this circularity approach in the supply phase. So when we talk about transporting at the international level, so collaborating with freight forwarders, but also when we talk about local transport and local warehousing, and culminating in the last phase in the proper end-of-life management through reusing, repairing, repurposing, recycling practices. That's basically what we do, but also the last point that I would like to share with all of you is something that we really care, and a project that we supported and we launched actually at COP28 in December, and is a call to action to bring together all humanitarian organizations, first of all, to hold ourselves accountable and responsible for the impact that we create on the environment, but also to call the key stakeholders as enablers. And I'm talking about donors, host governments, private sector, and so on, to work all together to reduce our carbon emission, particularly through reduction of scope 3 emission that are a little bit out of our direct control.
Thank you, Michela. And yeah, I think, you know, based on just these two questions, right, we're getting to another topic that we'll speak about a bit more later on in this session, but it's about collaboration, right? And how it's critical that we actually coordinate and collaborate to drive this, you know, these type of initiatives. So Osa, moving over to you, there's a recent study, you know, that has been published on the critical role of social enterprises in circular economy, which has been published by IKEA Social Enterprise. And I wanted to ask you, what are the top 3 opportunities you would share that can be taken forward to implement circular initiatives?
Thanks. At IKEA, of course, at the core, circularity goes through everything we do. And starting from the beginning, we have to redesign all the products so they can be repaired, maintained, reused, and also eventually dismantled to be recycled in the different material streams. So I would say that's the big work that has been going on for years now. And we have a new guide on how to design circular products. And coming to your question about social enterprises, so I represent IKEA Social Entrepreneurship, and we invest in and support about 100 social enterprises per year. And we see that there are a lot of social enterprises that work in the forefront in all those 3 areas that Cindy was referring to before. And we want to invest both in the waste management, in the very back end, especially where there are very vulnerable people, maybe living on picking waste and sorting waste and cleaning waste, but also in the other end, in the services. So a lot of recycle or refurbishment or repair is very labor intense, and second-hand has been for a long time something that social enterprises has had as a business model. And many people who have been far away from the labor market also have gotten the access to the labor market by doing these services. So we see that there are many, many opportunities. And as you referred to, we did a study together with TechnoServe last year, and you can find it on our webpage under resources at IKEA-socialentrepreneur.org. But basically, there are opportunities to partner with social enterprises, for instance, in services. Local services very close to where your products, for instance, end up when they need to be repaired or reused or recycled. So both taking back labor-intense maintenance and also reselling, I think, is a very important opportunity. We also see a lot of social enterprises, for instance, in South Asia or Southeast Asia, where waste management is a big challenge, are good partners to work with when it comes to making sure that waste is inclusive and not leaving informal workers behind, because this is a very important part of the circular economy, to take the social aspects into account. So both doing services and working in the very back end are great opportunities, but also finally maybe to learn. Test, try, learn, because none of us really knows what this circular economy will look like or which are the business models that will prevail. So we need to learn and try together.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rosa. And I think that ties into the next question that I had for Cindy, which is, how do you think procurement and supply chain professionals can adapt their activities to create circular supply chains? And I think taking into account, right, that it's a very new concept as well, and that it's not necessarily already in our systems or in our economies. So yeah, thank you, Cindy, if you could help us with that question.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Mic problems. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's quite a lot of things that when we change from the supply chains that we have today to circular ones, that will need to change. And we actually, in the paper that we did last year, that was mentioned in the video, we outlined 9 key focus areas for supply chain professionals to focus on in that transition to help them along the way. A couple of them touch on some of the things you just mentioned around localization and kind of rethinking some of the networks that you have, who you partner with. But I wanted to just bring up 2 today because of the amount of time that we have, and given that I believe we have mainly procurement people in the room, so focusing a bit more on the procurement specific angles. The first one is around supplier engagement. So we know that as we switch it from our traditional way of managing our supply chains to focusing a lot more heavily on reverse flows as well, we're going to have to adapt some of the agreements that we have. And one of the opportunities that exist is, as a procurement professional, is creating a really clear articulation of what it is that you need from your suppliers in the new circular system. And that can be done even from kind of the initial procurement negotiations. It can be put into agreements. It can even be part of the supplier evaluations that you do. And this could be mandating specific practices like disassembly, or it could be about saying that you need circular inputs like secondary materials or regeneratively grown biomass as the input from that supplier. And we are seeing that already happening with companies like Danone, who are they wanted to shift to using a lot more regenerative ingredients in their food products. And so they worked with their farmers, so with their suppliers, and actually granted them longer term contracts to help de-risk that transition for the farmer, but also enable Danone to have access then to the type of inputs that they were looking for. So that's one one action. Another thing that the second action I wanted to highlight here was around sort of data and quality. So this is something I've heard in some of the sessions actually throughout today, is that one of the big things in procurement and going forward will be that you have to get certain amounts of certain goods that are at a particular quality, right? And this is not going to change when you move into circular supply chains. But what will change is as we move into things like sharing and repairing and recycling, is that some of the data that we need to continue to use these materials and products might not be readily available to us with using the technologies we have today. So we'll have to adapt some of the tech, and there's a lot of new innovation in that space that is exciting to leverage. Internet of Things solutions, artificial intelligence, a bit of a buzzword today, but and yeah, digital product passports. And this is also something that we do see more and more organizations as they shift to circular supply chains taking on board. So Niaga, for example, into their mattresses that they produce, they've added in a digital product passport component, which allows the recyclers to scan that and actually have access to the information of all the different components of that material, of that mattress, and also suggestions on onward paths for those. So, so that makes it a lot easier for these products to be disassembled and for those components and materials to have further lifespans. So really focusing on adopting technologies that can allow you as a procurement professional to have access to not only where these circular inputs are and how much of those circular inputs exist, but also what is the material makeup of those, so that you can make sure that what you're sourcing is most appropriate for the ultimate product that you're looking to find an input for, because that can also help you then reduce any wastage down the line.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Yeah, and that's a really good point, right? If you consider it from the beginning of when you're actually designing that product, then it'll just mitigate any further waste down the line and you know, additional emissions. And I guess just moving or on that note, Michela, I wanted to ask you as well, what type of examples could you share that have been implemented in the humanitarian supply chain sector? And also what type of resources are available for procurement professionals via the WREC projects?
Thanks, Paola. And I would say that especially in the last year, we can see more and more initiatives across the humanitarian sector. And just to mention a few, there are several organizations which are working on green and more circular specification for the products that they purchase, but also organizations which started to adopt sustainable criteria. We have also examples from the UNHCR, which is the United Nations Organization for Refugees, which adopted and produced a lot of green specification. But one specific also example is about solar lamp. They are testing this new solar lamp that they are, for refugees for sure, that they are more durable, repairable, and compact. And at the same time, they are supporting local projects to repair the solar lamps in the refugees and the host communities. So looking at the approach a little bit more from the beginning to the end. But also there are organizations who purchase and distribute amongst the refugees recycled blankets made of totally recycled material and recyclable. We have cases also of organizations which have started to adopt circular manufactured laptops to decrease the waste, e-waste at the end of their chain. We have cases also of organizations who introduce reverse logistic clauses in their contracts to extend the lifespan of the products that they purchase, and a lot also for packaging. One of the big issues that we have always in humanitarian supply chains are the packaging that we produce at the end. And these adopting a very circular approach. But also we have much more simple initiatives related to repurposing of items, where, for example, in Colombia, broken tents has been recycled and made new plastic bricks to build libraries. Also plastic packaging that's been recycled and into new products for house cleaning and sold in the local market, but also all pallets that were used to produce furniture in a local school. So we have really more and more initiatives. Now I just wanted to mention a few. And about the resources, as mentioned, the WREC project is actively supporting all these circular economy initiatives, providing not only technical expertise, but also guidance and tools. And all these tools are available on our online portal, that is a free source. And again, just to mention a few tools that could be useful to many is one is the WREC waste management facility infrastructure mapping. So what we basically did, we went in all countries where humanitarian operations are happening, and we mapped with the infrastructure that are able to repurpose or recycle or simply properly disposing specific waste. Again, always keeping in mind that for us, the context where we work is always very challenging. So this is very useful, I think, not only for the humanitarian community, but for all sectors, also private sector that are working in countries where we operate. Other tools that I would like to mention is we're preparing tools to support organizations to embed circularity in their organizational policies, because a lot of times organizations, they don't know where to start. So we are providing tips, we are providing suggestions on how to start this process. We are developing also a circular economy tendering and purchasing tool. So actually is a tool to streamline the adoption of circularity within internal procurement process. And also we are working a lot in terms of reverse logistics to make sure and to support the implementation and adoption of reverse logistics in the field. And we are preparing an assessment tool, so to make sure that the organization knows what they need and if they are ready to implement reverse logistics. And as mentioned before, all these resources are open source, are in our website, and could be maybe useful to non-humanitarian organizations as well. And because also in the humanitarian world, we are operating in different contexts with maybe different models, but well, we are all striving for the same results. So I think we're all trying to do more or less the same. So I think that we could share tools and guidance. So happy to share.
Thank you, Michela. And yeah, maybe we could definitely share the link to the website or something so that people can also access it. And now, Osa, I wanted to ask you what role you think social entrepreneurs can play in the implementation of circular economy solutions.
I think we're talking about a major systems change approach here together that we collaboratively want to reach. And I can share some examples of how we at IKEA Social Entrepreneurship work with social enterprises to test and learn new approaches. And basically there are three ways that we work. One is that we bring together cohorts of social entrepreneurs in accelerator programs that we do together with intermediaries. And when we elect the social enterprises that are able to join, we always make sure that there are some that work on the circular economy. We also look into inclusive employment and renewable materials. And we see that there are a wide range of social entrepreneurs. It's all the way from unplastify, how to not use plastic, or how to do plates from palm leaves, or how to sell your sugar in bulk without containers, but also about how to sort your waste and how to take it back through different apps. And so by doing these accelerators, we want to create more movement in the sector of circularity. Another way we work is through investment funds and loan funds. So, for instance, in India, we have, together with the Waste Foundation and SIDA and Juno Social Business, created a fund that is called Take a Stake Fund, that is very implicitly focusing on the back end of the waste value chain and grassroots waste management social enterprises that are working with picking, collecting, cleaning, shredding, and also all the way into recycling. And for us, of course, this is very far away from where we produce the products. It could be 14 steps in the value chain, but by working grassroots up, we can also make sure that there are more social enterprises, more waste management system, and more learnings that can go into the transformation of the whole sector. And we also work directly with some social enterprises like Sahas Zero Waste in India that do many of those steps, and where we're also supporting them in innovating how to separate plastic, for instance, into 200 different categories, and how to find recyclers and partners that can use many versions of different types of plastic, which is a challenge. We don't have applications for all the plastic waste that we have yet. So we're trying with a multitude of support and investment, and also technical assistance and coaching from our coworkers, to find ways to enable solutions for a more circular world going forward.
Thank you, Åsa. And I think that kind of starts tying into the last question that I have for all of you on the panel, which is, how do you think different sectors, private, the public, humanitarian, can work together to make supply chain circular? Considering that we might be working on trying to do the same thing, we might even be working in the same countries. So that's the first part of the question. And also, what opportunities and challenges would you like to highlight? So we can probably start with Cindy.
Sure. Yeah, it's a big question. I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate, right? We're talking, as you mentioned also, about a very systemic challenge that we're facing. And so we do need all actors to be involved. I think there's two sides. There's one side is what everyone has to do individually on their own. So I think there's a lot that businesses can do to already start shifting their procurement practices, their own operations to be more circular. And equally, I think there's a lot that policymakers can do to legislate, to regulate, to create the type of context in which it is easier for businesses and to take on more circular activity, and to really incentivize that. So, I mean, we see that with EPR legislation in a number of European countries, for example. And then I think there's also these intersection points, right, as to what can all these players do together. And quite often, policymakers also look to businesses, right, for knowing what is needed to practically enact that change. So I think a lot of businesses have opportunities to play into policymaking in varied ways, but also within the kind of business arena, I think there's a lot of intersection that can happen not only within your own supply chain, but we can kind of zoom out and think about how can you create a circular supply chain, yes, but using actually the expertise and connections to other industries, or even with competitors. Like if we talk about things like, localization, or we want more take-back systems and repairing of different items, that might not always make sense to only do for each organization to create their own facilities to do that, right? Maybe we need more regional hubs where similar materials can be pulled together and more easily then reprocessed and put out again into the economy. So I think there's opportunity to collaborate on so many different angles and to really be a bit radical sometimes in the rethinking of things like ownership of and control of different processes, and who you can partner with, because it might be organizations or entities that you've never thought of before.
Thank you, Cindy. And I think maybe we can also, if you would like to be next, just so that we follow in the room.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree. There are so many opportunities, and maybe to start with the areas that are most challenging. I mean, for instance, textile, we all know it's a very, very tricky area where everyone that works within that, both corporates and governments and everyone working with the waste management needs to come together and find solutions. So my favorite way of working is to create theories of change together to make sure that where is it you want to go and what are the pathways there. So make sure to create your theory of change with your competitors or with associations. There are new movements coming up also that you can join. But then also to look into what are other materials that are more sustainable. We shouldn't forget that, I think, because there is a lot of innovation going on, and also to invest and support those new ways of working and totally unheard of solutions that we might use in the future. So being open and innovative while making sure that your current setup really moves towards circularity.
Thank you, Åsa. And Michela?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, especially for the humanitarian organization, we really believe that more and more engagement, more collaboration with the private sector is critical and essential for us, and especially in the areas where we operate. And to better explain myself, and just to give you an example, as humanitarians, we often have to choose between less sustainable local suppliers and more sustainable international suppliers. And of course, we would like to opt always for a local solution, but it's always difficult to strike a balance and choose well. And this is one of the main reasons why we need to collaborate more and more with suppliers, and especially with local suppliers, local private sector. And from our side, we need to make sure that as humanitarians, we need to create a sufficient demand in such a difficult environment. And we need to also make sure that the local supply, in order that the local suppliers have enough demand and are able to provide and to respond to this demand with certain standards, with a certain sustainable criteria and circularity approach based in their model plan.
Thank you, Michela. Great. I think, this has been a really good discussion. I see there are several questions online, but I wanted to check first if there's maybe a few in the room, or if not, we can go straight to the ones online.
I think we have one in the room.
Perfect.
Thanks very much. I'm Leida Reiner from the World Fair Trade Organization, which is a verifying organization and a network of social enterprises to check if they are compliant with all the fair trade principles, etc. One of the things that we found out, because we did a survey under our members, but also a lot of other, let's say, purpose-driven SMEs, social enterprises, etc., that they are really willing to go into the circular economy, etc., but it's for them very difficult to do so, because often because of the scale, often because of the technology is not there or not accessible for them. So what we started to do together with other partners is to have an AI-driven, but generated but controlled environmental solution hub where SMEs, social enterprises, green enterprises, etc., they can find each other and really put their solutions there. It's in all languages, so it's not only in English, which is often as well a big problem for social enterprises around the world. So I think it would be, I just using this opportunity to let you know that that exists. And I'm happy to give you the link if you are interested to join, but also for the social enterprises as well, of course, mainly for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, I think I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in learning more or seeing the tools. So if you can share it, yeah, please share it with everybody. I'll move on to a question online. So the question is, what strategies can be implemented to address the potential conflict of interest that profit-driven companies may face when considering the production of longer-lasting, reusable, repairable products, which could potentially reduce new product sales? So I'll just open it up to see who would like to take the question.
I have maybe something to add to that. So at the foundation, we talk a lot about not only the environmental benefits of circular economy, but also the economic benefits. And one of the things that we see for the type of challenge that I guess the question asker was posing can be addressed by shifting also your business model to a more circular one. So even if your total sales volumes go down, how can you then diversify either what you're providing? So maybe your organization also becomes the service provider for the repair, and or alternatively, we see a lot more of these kind of models where actually the ownership is retained by the organizations. Maybe you don't sell your product, maybe you rent it, or maybe you lease it. So there's different ways that, while yes, the kind of money inflow that you get will be different, you can still create a similar monetary value long term from also creating more durable products that are repairable. So yeah, I'd say that a big thing there is just shifting mindset also in terms of your business model, alongside just transitioning your kind of product design to be more durable.
Great, thank you very much, Cindy. And if Michela or Rosa, would you like to add anything else? Or if not, we can move to the next question. Sorry, I lost a bit of the audio for a second. Okay, let me move on to the next question. So it is, have you come across some sort of informed choice matrix to shortlist the relevant circular economy principle by product type, by geography of consumption, or by policy maturity?
Paola, can you repeat the start of that question?
Sorry, let me repeat it. Yeah, it says, have you come across some sort of informed choice matrix to shortlist the relevant circular economy principle? So either by product type, by geography of consumption, or policy maturity. So I think the person is asking, yeah, if there's like some type of tool to define or to choose which circular economy principle.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we would, from the foundation's perspective, we usually advocate for a kind of holistic approach to the circular economy. So we feel that if there is only kind of one principle that you're looking at, you're not going to get the full benefits of transitioning to a more circular way of operating. The principles do overlap a little bit as well. So I'd say that there's many times where you might find ways to circulate materials that actually allow you to eliminate waste, for example. So we don't have as such a tool to kind of help you decide which principle to focus on. We do have a lot of resources if you look at, if you're interested in, for instance, the product design, kind of similar to also what you were talking about. We have a tool on our website, which is freely available to anyone, that helps you guide through how do you design for a circular economy, and that kind of talks you through all the different 3 principles and different design strategies that you can take on a product level. And we also put out a piece of research, I think 2 years ago now, looking at organizational structure. So if you want to go into slightly more of a, it touches on governance, but largely how you set up your teams and activities as you transition to a circular way of operating. So that could be another resource, again, freely available on the website. So there are different resources, but yeah, they usually have a bit more of a holistic approach across all principles, and then there are specific solutions that will touch a bit more on one or the other.
Yeah, the design guide I mentioned earlier is actually also open source. So if you look for IKEA Circular Design Guide, you will find how we work.
Thank you both.
May I add? I don't know if we still have time.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to mention also something that we are working on is a tendering and purchasing tool for circular products. So actually we are working on categories, and more or less I think it's what the question is asking. So for example, when we talk about packaging, there is a section of packaging. So when you are purchasing new products, there are certain criteria or certain aspects that you need to consider for the packaging. That can be the bleaching of the packaging, can be the composition of the packaging, the material, the recyclability of the packaging. But also when we go into the item itself, for example, if you want to purchase pens, okay, what did you consider circular aspects in those pens that you want to buy? Like, I don't know, is the ink based on water instead of chemicals, or many other aspects related to the single products. So also these resources will be available on our website very, very soon. It could be and maybe helpful.
Thank you, everyone. I think we have time maybe for another question. So there's one about the health industry. So basically, it says, in the health industry, there is a significant stigma around reusable and manufactured products. Is there any advice for getting my clinical colleagues to buy in to circular economy principles without overcomplicating things for them? And I think this is something that also from, in the humanitarian sector is also one of the problems that we have. So it would be good to get your insights. I think maybe whoever would like to start to answer the question.
So yes, healthcare is definitely a challenging area. We have worked with some of our network organizations in this space, but mainly when it comes to medical equipment. So we've done a lot of work with Philips and learning about a lot of the reuse programs they have for many of their larger scale medical equipment that they sell to hospitals. And in that space, it does seem to work quite well to have kind of, I think a big focus for them has been repairability. So really thinking of how can the big pieces of equipment be disassembled so that if something breaks down, you can only take out a small portion of it and fix it, rather than having to haul the entire piece of equipment out. So that saves, a lot of resources, but also is practically a lot easier to do in terms of maintenance. I do know that from the perspective of if we get into kind of items that are more, there's more like skin-to-skin contact on them. There's a lot of legislation around, so that becomes a bit more of a challenge. So that is a more challenging area, but there's definitely aspects of the healthcare sector as well that are a bit easier to walk into as an entry point, maybe if you're trying to get some more buy-in on circular economy in that space.
Paola, there's a question in the room.
Yeah, sure. I think we do have a few more minutes, so.
First off, thank you very much. Really, really interesting panel. My name is Mark Horshowski, and I'm with an organization called Moving Worlds. We operate the Transform Support Hub, which is a global accelerator network to help social enterprises scale up and build commercial partnerships. And if I can, I'm going to share just like a really quick kind of anecdote and then ask for some advice from the crowd. So these sunglasses are made from recycled chip plastic bags that used to be impossible to recycle. And so the innovator that made these, a group called Ashaya, figured that there was a lot of room because of circularity movements to take these recycled chip plastic bags that were previously not recyclable and turn it into building materials for corporate partners and others. They launched and they couldn't find any customers, right? And so they pivoted and they made their own products as like a proof of concept, which are going really well and have sold out in most cases. So I feel very lucky to have these. But I guess, you know, advice for the crowd and really geared towards social enterprises, right? Many of the earlier innovators hit that pioneer gap. They come up with an innovation, but they're too small to get to higher levels of scale at their current point. What advice do you have for them? What other tips can they use to kind of make it through that pioneer gap to show market validation and then to get to that level of scale that they can then get pulled into these bigger supply chains?
Well, I can kick us off. I'm sure everyone has some pointers for this. I'd say, so in our work, we don't deal as much with specifically social enterprises, but we do have a lot of startups as well who we work with who face similar challenges. And how do you talk about scale? And, you know, I'm new to the market. I think one of the things that is quite encouraging is that a lot of big businesses, so a lot of the people you might be a supplier to, are more and more looking at how can they engage with circular economy activities. So, and one of the things is looking at impact, right? So there is a social impact, and then there's obviously a lot of focus on climate, a lot of increasing focus on biodiversity. So I'd say one of the things is if you can demonstrate how your solution can positively contribute to solving some of those challenges, that's a really big win. Also, in a lot of conversations with businesses, they do usually look to partner with smaller organizations who can be a bit more agile and experiment more with new concepts. And then if they, you know, really like a certain concept, then you can start to have those conversations together on how can you scale. So while unlocking scale on your own might be challenging, if you find someone to partner with who has a lot more capital or infrastructure that can help you kind of leapfrog some of those stages, I think that can be really beneficial. So yeah, just finding an in on what might a bigger organization or someone with more resources than you want, and really focusing on that.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
to
you.
build on that,
So would you like to add?
sorry, maybe a very quick one, Mark. In the circular economy, more than ever, traceability will be key. And one advantage that social enterprises have, that they can build it in from the beginning, making sure that they have the data, and that will then also be a competitive advantage to have both the traceability data, but also the impact data, the environmental and the social impact, which everyone will ask for going forward.
Thank you, Osa. Great. I think we just have 1 minute, so I'd really like to thank our panelists today. I mean, I think this has been hopefully a very fruitful discussion, and I'm hoping it gives insights and it will drive people to want to start, you know, investigating more about how to implement circular economy principles. And yeah, once again, thank you very much to Osa, Michela, and Cindy for being here, and to all of those that have joined in person and also online. Have a great rest of your day.